In Those Years by Adrienne Rich. In those years, people would say we lost track of the meaning of we, of you. We found ourselves reduced to I, and the whole thing became silly and ironic and terrible. We were trying to lead a personal life, and yes, that was the only life that we could bear witness to. But the great dark birds of history screamed and plunged into our personal weather. They were heading somewhere else, but their beaks and pinions drove along the shore, along the rags of fog, where we stood, saying, I.
As we light our chalice, we share our church covenant. We promise to listen and learn together. With compassion, curiosity, and an open mind, engage in creating a warm and welcoming community, work together and beyond our walls to address social and environmental challenges, and with our time, talent, and treasure, support our church and its mission.
Good morning. I'm Reverend Pam Romancic, and my pronouns are she and her. I serve the Unitarian Church in Hinsdale, and I'm so glad to be together with you today. We wish a happy Hannukah to all of our Jewish friends and neighbors who are celebrating this Festival of Lights. Today, we're looking at how stories we tell, the stories we hear, how all of those stories shape our experience and influence our lives. We're looking through the lens of the Sikh faith, spelled S-I-K-H, specifically through the teachings of a Sikh activist author named Valerie Kaur. Her book, See No Stranger, has been an inspiration to me, and I hope you find something worthwhile as well. In this time of darkness, she urges us to wonder, to imagine that we are not in a darkness of a tomb, but in the creative possibility of a womb. If you enjoyed today's service, I hope you'll share it with someone who might appreciate a little bit of light during this challenging time. Now, this church has a lot going on, even during a pandemic, so I encourage you to visit our website, www.hinsdaleunitarian.org, and to follow us on social media so you know all the great things that are happening. If you're new and would like to receive regular communications, you can leave your information in the chat box, or you can click the contact button on YouTube or on our website. Each week, folks who join us on Zoom are invited to stay for a brief virtual coffee hour after the service. We split into chat rooms where people can respond to the service, get to know new people, or catch up on all of our shared, distanced lives. We send our love and care to those in our community who have been dealing with COVID recently. The rising levels around us are bringing in the circles of people that we know closer and closer. We know folks who have lost loved ones already. Love to Linda Carlin and son Corey, who are recovering. And our own family lost a beloved family, uncle, father, and grandfather who passed away just last week. We also offer sincere condolences to Sarah Joyner, whose brother was killed in a car accident. Our hearts are with you, Sarah. If you know of anyone else who is in need of help or support, a call, some friendly, just kindness, please type your intention in all caps in the chat box. Or you can call and leave a message with either myself or with Pam Fodor, and we will get back with you. A little later in the service, we will hold a space for meditation and prayer. We hold all the intentions that are held this morning, which are too tender to be shared, in the fullness of all his community's very strong, very wonderful love. Now, if you have practical challenges like getting grocery, or if some emergency arises, please call and let us know so we can help. There is an emergency relief fund for that very purpose. Again, contact me or the office and we can help. This week will be Linda Lebaraki's last week in the office. She has served our church for almost a decade, and we will miss her wonderful sense of humor and her, kindness. Since we can't gather to celebrate her time, please take a moment to let her know how much You have appreciated all she's done. One more note, if you'd like to get an article in the January Touchstone, you need to think about submitting it now. We'd love to hear from you, what you're doing and what your passion is these days, because that's a great way we could learn more about what we're doing together in this world. And while our worship schedule is on the website, I do want to alert you that Paula Dvorak will be leading our winter solstice celebration service next Sunday at 7 p.m. There's a link on our website. And next week will also be our annual holiday pageant with all the joyful chaos and mayhem and just togetherness that we've always had. Only this year, it'll be on Zoom. So please join us. Finally, I want to thank Jamie, Suzanne, and Jean for their continued amazing support to help make these services happen every week. Now, please, if it fills your heart, join in singing our opening hymn, We Would Be One.
Hi everyone. Let's open our toolbox and find our tool of the week. Here it is. It's a backpack. Backpacks help us carry important things like snacks and water when we go on a hike, or our homework and books when we go to school. A backpack is the tool of the week because it, or a form of it, might have been used by the early Universalist traveling preachers. These preachers, both male and female, showed the courage of their convictions by traveling from community to community, spreading a message of a religion based on faith, hope, and love. Thanks to them, we have our great church, the Unitarian Church of Hinsdale, to call our faith home. Thanks for listening. See you soon. Enjoy your week.
Hello. Won't you join me now in a spirit of prayer and meditation? I invite you to settle down into your chairs. Relax your body. Take a deep breath in and then let it out, cleansing any anxiety, any worry, anything that you are holding in your body. Allowing it to flow down on your shoulders, down your back, down your hips, through your legs and out into the rich, dark earth below, the earth which holds us, which holds all within it. Join me now in a meditation by Barbara Deming. Spirit. Spirit that hears each one of us, hears all that is, listens, hears us out. Inspire us now. Our own pulse beats in every stranger's throat, and also there within the flowered ground beneath our feet. And teach us to listen. We can hear it in the water in the wood, and even in the stone. We are earth of this earth, and we are bone of its bone. This is the prayer that I sing, for we have forgotten this, and in doing so, the earth is perishing. Spirit, breathe in our heart of hearts this day. Allow us to remember our connection to one another, to the earth, to this reality in which we live and breathe and have our being.
For the past 5 years, our congregation has staffed the DuPage Pads homeless shelter at Redeemer Lutheran Church. We weren't able to do that this year. To keep them safe during the pandemic, Pads is housing clients in motels. They have 196 people, including 68 children, in 115 motel rooms. Housing and feeding this many people is a huge expense. Homelessness continues to increase as businesses shut down, benefits run out, and evictions increase. Homelessness is a tragedy for anyone, but is especially difficult when it involves families with children. You have been very generous with your time and with your money in the past. Please step up again and support PADS. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Gene Schaefer, serving you on the board of the Unitarian Church of Hinsdale. And this is the time in our service when we remember the good things this church does in the world and invites you to help support that work. You can go to our website at hinsdaleunitarian.org and click the donate button, or you can simply send your check to the church office at 17 West Maple Street in Hinsdale. I'm so proud of the work our UCH family does to improve our place in the universe. We are a community, always learning about the world, offering connections and inspiration, helping our children to learn values to sustain lives of meaning and purpose. We work in so many ways to create a more just and peaceful society, and that includes sharing our beautiful space with many outside nonprofit groups, many of whom need a safe space now more than ever. Check our website for all we've done and all the good we continue to do. Your support not only maintains our congregation, but it truly does reach all parts of Earth's community. So thank you. Now, even though we can't be physically together at this time, I invite you to say our offering words with us. This church is made up of all of us. It is what we learn together, the work we do together, the fun we have together. It is what we share with one another, with the people around us, and with all the world.
Facing their own fires. That was Valerie Kaur, a person who understands the power of the stories we tell, and who understands that by telling her story, she is connecting with people who may have ever heard of the Sikh religion, or who simply see terrorists whenever they come into contact with her family's long brown hair, their turbans, their beards. She's telling her story to offer a space of connection and a glimpse into a foreign reality and into a place where commonality can then be found. I have a story for you today, too. It's not mine, but it comes through my daughter, Jenny, who many of you have met when she's been here visiting through the years. And it's the story of her friend, Utter Man, a member of the Sikh community that Jen has gotten to know and become to love in her time in Portland, Oregon. Utter is a hardworking builder. He has a young family and he delivers equipment sometimes to support his business. Last month, he set out to make a delivery to Northwest Montana, and he ended up in a little bit of trouble. After making his delivery to the Thompson River lumber in Thompson River, he set out to haul a water tank to Kettle Falls, Washington on his way home to Portland. He headed up through the mountains, following his GPS, going deeper and deeper into that pristine and beautiful wilderness of Northwest Montana and northern Washington. The major industry out there is logging, and he passed through miles and miles of old growth forest. It's a beautiful place. But at one point, his GPS told him to turn off the main road. Because there was a thick layer of snow at that altitude, Otter didn't realize that he was turning onto a logging road that wasn't maintained during winter. There was nothing but dirt and gravel under the snow. A little over 3 miles in, the gooseneck trailer he was pulling got stuck in the muck of the road, and he could not get it out. It was at that time he realized he'd lost cell service, and he was on his own. He decided that he would unhitch the trailer and continue on his way in his truck to try to find help. Unfortunately, though, he'd only gone a short way farther down the road when his truck slid off the edge and got deeply stuck in the snow, too. Otter was getting worried. Temperatures would be dropping, and he knew he wouldn't make it back to the main road if he left his truck. He hadn't seen anyone for hours, and it was getting dark. He summoned all of his survival knowledge and made a plan to stay as safe as he could while he waited for help, rationing his fuel and the little food that he had with him. Otter thought about his family. He was a member of the local Sikh community, a close-knit family group that gathered often and supported one another. He had a wife, Kaur, and a little boy who had just celebrated his first birthday. Kaur wanted to be there for him. As he settled into the night, running the engine intermittently long enough to warm up the cab, he thought about how much he loved his family and his friends so he could stay focused on getting back to them. Now, the Sikhs are a pretty amazing group of people who follow the teaching of Sri Guru Nanak from the 15th century. The name Sikh means seeker of wisdom or learner, and a core belief is the oneness of all beings, that we are all connected and kin. They strive for justice and the benefit and prosperity of all. Sikhism rejects the claims that any particular religious tradition has a monopoly on absolute truth. They have a lot in common with Unitarian Universalists. Sikhs see the divine in all beings and are vegetarians who seek to live in harmony with all of Earth's creatures. Some of the most devout followers in India will wear a mask over their faces all the time so they don't accidentally inhale and destroy a fellow being in insect form. My personal experience of Sikhism was in 2015 at the Parliament of World Religions in Salt Lake City in Utah. Each day, the Sikh community there provided something called langar for every person at the convention, over 5,000 people. Karen and I attended and were amazed at the experience. There was generosity and kindness and food. It was amazing. They served you. They brought you the most amazing Indian food that I have ever eaten in my life. And they didn't just give you one serving. They came back 2, 3 times, urging more helpings upon you. And so my overwhelming impression of Sikhs was where it was, of generosity and kindness. And when my daughter met some members of the Sikh community at the dog park, she became friends with one of them, and that impression was confirmed. Jen was welcomed into their group and was inspired by the way this group of young people made their faith alive and real in the world. They've been part of her safe bubble during the pandemic, and she's thrilled to be able to share holidays with them as she's a vegetarian too. Jenny has told me how they live their values every day. Just as Valerie Kaur said, they proclaim their posture as a servant to others by never cutting their hair, by wearing a full beard and turban as outward signs of who they are in the world. Now back here in Illinois, I heard about Attar's story on the first night he was gone. He usually stayed in constant contact with his wife, Kaur, and his father while he was traveling. And when they hadn't heard from him in 12 hours, they knew something was wrong. Their friends all gathered to their home to support Kaur as she tried to get somebody to go out and look for him. Jenny called me and asked that Karen and I pray for them. And we did. I have to admit, it seemed bleak. I was preparing myself to support my daughter if he wasn't found. Back in Montana, a hunting party of 3 friends, Scott Pardee, Aaron Brown, and Chad Owens, were coming home through the woods from a full day of hunting when they saw Utter's trailer stuck in the snow. They looked around, but they couldn't find any footprints walking away from the site, so they figured whoever it was had driven off and would be okay and would come back later from the trailer. They were men whose homes were filled with taxidermy hunting trophies mixed in with some Trump banners and large American flags. They were deeply connected to the land, but did not share the Sikh commitment to the sanctity and preciousness of every life. Once back at their camp, they settled in for a warm evening, but soon found themselves wondering about that trailer stuck in the woods. And in the morning, when they started heading out, they decided that they made a conscious choice to go back the way they'd come for one more look, as something didn't feel right. When they got there, nothing new jumped out at them, and they were about to go on their way when Pardee and Owen's son decided to walk up the road just a little bit further. The newspaper article said they went only 200 yards, turned a corner, and that's when they saw a man's pickup truck. Now, Uttar had spent the night facing some of his darkest fears, doing his best to ration fuel. He had nonetheless begun to document his experience on his phone in case he was found too late. He left a message to his wife and child and put a note on his windshield. He did everything he could to stay alive, while also making peace with his situation. Sikh teacher Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji taught, "I will accept life as it happens," and Uttar did his best. Back in Oregon, Kartar, Jenny, and all of their friends were deeply concerned. It had been 24 hours since they'd heard from him, and they all knew stories of people who got lost in mountain passes and never made their way out again. They set up phone banks, tried to get some government entity to set up a search and rescue team, but they couldn't say exactly which state he was in, so they couldn't get anyone to take it on. They did reach some really kind people in Montana who volunteered to go out and drive over the pass just to make sure he wasn't there. But when they called back, they reported not finding anything. A few of Uttar's friends flew up to Spokane, Washington, and rented cars to drive to the place he had last been seen, and others were in the process of renting a helicopter so they could go out and look for themselves. They knew they had to find their friend. Back on the mountain, the hunting party approached the truck. Pardee said man jumped out of the truck, delighted to see someone, and he thought they were there to rescue him and didn't realize till later that they just happened to be in the area hunting. I can only imagine their surprise when a large, bearded, turbaned man emerged from the truck. But the Sanders County Ledger reports, because the Thompson Falls men didn't have equipment or tools to get man out that evening, they did what most Montanans would do and invited man home with them for a home-cooked meal. They took man to Pardee's brother Chad's house. Pardee said they weren't at his brother's house for no more than 30 or 40 minutes before a group of 8 of man's friends showed up. They are such a tight group of friends, Pardee said. They were crying and hugging each other when they reunited, and hugging us and thanking us for saving his life. The Oregon group joined the Montanans, and they hung out with them for the whole evening. They couldn't believe that someone would take them in like that, Pardee said, end quote. Once within cell service, Uttar made his call to Kartar to let her know he was safe, and Jenny said when Kartar got the call, she collapsed on the ground, and they all watched around her, not knowing exactly what happened. It took a few minutes for those gathered to realize the good news. Uttar had been found. You might think this is the end of the story, but actually it even gets better. The men spent the night together, Sikhs and hunters, eating and celebrating this amazing miracle. What had been lost had been found. The Sikhs were deeply grateful for these men who followed their instincts, who went the extra mile in care of their fellow human beings. In the morning, they shared breakfast and spent 3.5 hours working to free both of Uttar's vehicles. After they had all made it back to Portland, Uttar's good friend Dudham said he had wanted to do something to thank the men for the kindness and the rescue of their friends, so they started a GoFundMe page where they raised more than $6,700 in total, in which Dudham purchased and delivered more than 2,200 in Cabela gift cards to Pardee, Brown, and Owens. Now, these were men at opposite ends of some pole, strangers to each other on many levels, and people who may have only seen a stranger or even an opponent if they had met under different circumstances. But this time, they remembered their shared humanity, remembered that in the deepest truth of our lives, no one is a stranger. Each of us is a member of the shared family of humanity. When we let our defenses down, we can move into that beautiful and rare space. We can be curious about those we see as others. We can wonder about their stories. We can find places of connection and commonality rather than just dwelling on what makes us different. Valerie, Kaur, the speaker in today's readings, is a sick woman who has made it her life's work to tell stories of revolutionary love. She has experienced the pain of suffering, of being disregarded, of being assaulted, of being made other by people around her in the world. She's watched loved ones be killed because of their otherness. But inspired by her family, by her Papa G, she stepped into that fire that it takes sometimes to look beyond the surface difference and work for a more just and connected world. And in doing so, she's witnessed the power of us telling our stories and of us listening to others' stories, the power of people who refuse to succumb to the divisiveness of othering. In her book, See No Stranger, a memoir and manifesto of revolutionary love, Kaur writes, when listening gets hard, I focus on taking the next breath. I feel the ground beneath my feet. I try to wonder about this person's story and the possible wound in them. I think of an earnest question and try to stay curious long enough to be changed by what I hear. Maybe, just maybe, my opponent will begin to wonder about me in return, will ask me questions and listen to my story. Maybe their views will break apart and new horizons will open in the process. But then again, maybe not. It doesn't matter as long as the primary goal of listening is to deepen my own understanding. Listening does not grant other side legitimacy. It grants them humanity and thus preserves my own. End quote. Listening does not grant legitimacy. It does grant humanity while preserving my own. We find ourselves today in an us versus them world where no one out there is going to make it all better and fix it for us. But you know what? Each and every one of us can be intentional about being curious, about wondering how those who think so differently have arrived at their conclusions. Each of us can wonder and be curious and step into that fire of discomfort long enough to allow ourselves to grow and transform into the people we truly want to be. Changing ourselves through the stories we hear, the stories we decide to tell, may be the only thing possible that we can actually do in this world. This story is yours now. You have the power to share, to lean into it, to grow, or simply to move on and forget about it. What choice will you make today? How will your actions change this world? Amen, and blessed be.
Our reading is from Sri Guru Granth Sahib. It's the Raag Kanarra, translated by Valerie, Kaur. I have forgotten the envy of others, since I found my sacred company. I see no enemy. I see no stranger. All of us belong to each other. What the divine does, I accept as good. I have received wisdom from the holy. The one pervades the all. Gazing upon the one, beholding the one, Nanak blesses, blossoms forth in happiness.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of its truth, the warmth of this community, nor the fire of our commitment. These we carry in our hearts and share with all the world.
Our benediction today is from Rumi. Since in order to speak, one must first listen, learn to speak by listening. Thank you all for all the blessings of joining us today, for all the stories that you share with one another, for all the things that we can do to listen one each other into our truth. I'm going to introduce now our time-wasting video, which comes at the end of every service, with music following the video that's been created by Jamie. If you're
Today's video is about lava lamps. Yes, those things that hang out in the set unceremoniously, just doing their globular thing. Lava lamps have been a personal object of fascination for many years. They are objectively pointless objects, producing little to no usable light, and take literal hours to become operational, especially for larger ones, but once they're going, they're downright transfixing and hypnotic. And the way they work is stupidly simple, but at the same time, surprisingly complicated. Inside the base is an incandescent light bulb, often some sort of appliance bulb, and then, when you put the globe on the base, you end up with what amounts to a weird bottle on top of a light bulb. And that light bulb has to be incandescent because these things work thanks to the heat they generate. So it's a good thing they use appliance bulbs since they're unlikely to be phased out. Can't exactly put an LED bulb in an oven, can you? But as is the case for many things in life, it's what's inside that counts. Clearly, there are two substances inside this bottle, a clear one and a not clear one. Clearly, they don't want to mix, and it's also clear that the not clear one is some sort of wax, clearly. When the lamp is cold, it forms a big old clump at the bottom, and some gentle inverting and shaking reveals that clearly this is a solid. That much is clear. Indeed, anyone who's ever owned a lava lamp and watched it warm up knows just how clear it is that we're dealing with a wax. A fun, frequent phenomenon found in lava lamps when they warm up is the spiky tower of wax. You'll often find that the clump of wax at the bottom sort of pushes itself upward as the wax nearest to the bulb melts and expands, and once enough has melted, it pokes a hole in the top of the dome and then splooshes outward and upward, where it resolidifies once in contact with the still cold, mysterious, clear liquid. You don't always get the spiky tower of wax. Sometimes you just get the bloaty glob of indigestion or the fantastic flippy flip. No matter how the wax behaves in the beginning, it takes until the entire globe has warmed to the point that all the wax has melted and can stay melted, and then you get variously colored jigglies. What a callback! Now here's where our friend physics makes for some magnificent magma magic. The wax, much like most substances out there, expands when it melts. Water does the opposite because it's cheeky, but anyway, once the wax melts, its density is almost exactly that of the mysterious clear liquid. That means it's not exactly going to float, nor is it going to sink. It'll just be suspended somewhat. But luckily for us, its density, and thus its buoyancy in the mysterious clear liquid, varies a tiny bit with its temperature. And also, luckily for us, because the heat source is at the very bottom, we get a temperature gradient across the globe's length, with the hottest parts being at the bottom and the coolest parts being at the top, farthest from the lamp. So we end up with this cyclic behavior where the wax starts at the bottom, gets heated by the lamp, becomes ever so slightly buoyant in the mysterious clear liquid thanks to thermal expansion, and then it floats to the top. Once there, it cools a bit since it's far from the light bulb, which causes it to contract ever so slightly, and thus it is no longer buoyant, but in fact sinkient, and then it sinks back to the bottom. And this repeats over and over and over and over and over and over.